Hey everyone, thank you so much for taking the time to attend tonight's Monday guest speaker series. I'm very excited for the panel that we have in store for you tonight. This is definitely one of our more popular offerings that we do. Before we get to our panel, just a few quick reminders for you all. So we do have some really exciting guest speakers planned out over the next few weeks, including a talk next week on how to find remote jobs. That one's with Scarlett Herod at Brooksource. We have one on React frameworks with Arroya Morgan the following week. We have a speaker who's going to be talking about agile methodologies on August 21st. One of our mentors, David Brundage, is going to talk about career paths in data analytics and data science on August 28th. And then we also have one on September 11th. One of our former mentors, CJ Taylor, is going to be talking about AWS certifications. We have quite a few other things in the works as well. So we will definitely be sharing those topics and speakers with you all as we have them. Our team, our careers focused team, is also working on a few more hiring fairs, both in person and virtual, through the end of this year. So keep an eye out for that. We'll have more information to share in coming weeks. And as always, our team is here to help. So as you're listening to our panelists' stories tonight and you're inspired, hopefully, to start your own job hunt, please reach out to us. You can always reach out to me. I'm Shannon Sheehy on Slack, and I'm happy to send you the right way. We also have technical career coaches, so you can reach out to Jenny Terry if you're a part of the Code Louisville program, or August Mapp if you're part of the Code Kentucky program. And then we have tech employer specialists on our team who are out there working with employers and trying to make connections to help get you all hired. And those folks are Allie Ryan, who just joined our team for the Code Louisville area, David York in Eastern Kentucky and Bluegrass, and Monica Remy in Northern Kentucky. So again, please feel free to reach out to any of us as you're starting your own job hunts, and we'll be excited to help you out there. So with that, I want to go ahead and move into our panel, and I'm going to let each of our panelists introduce themselves in a moment. We have some really great panelists on board with us tonight. We have William Berry, Kevin Lee, and Vicky Kaeser. All of these folks have gone through the program and are in tech jobs, and we are very excited to have them here with us. I have quite a few questions queued up just to get us started, get things going. But as we start talking, if you all do have your own questions, feel free to throw them in chat. I want to make sure that we're mixing those in and making sure that you all are able to ask what's top of mind for you. So with that, we will go ahead and do some intros. I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to William, if you don't mind, if you want to start us out and just give us maybe like a brief synopsis of your career so far, including any pathways you've taken and where you work now.
Cool. Happy to be here. Thank you so much. Yeah, my name is William Berry, and I'm a junior full stack engineer at Humana. I went through the web dev sort of pathway, so 1 and 2 before the modular system changed everything up. And I graduated from Code Louisville in May, so this past May, so like the last session that they had officially, and got a job about a month or 2 after graduating.
Awesome. Thank you, William. Kevin, I'll go ahead and toss it to you.
Hey everyone, my name is Kevin. I'm a software developer at Farm Credit Mid-America. I did Code Louisville back in 2020, and when I was going through the program, I actually got promoted internally from, I was working with hardware, and then so they saw that I was learning programming, so I got moved up to software development, and that's how I got started.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin. And then we also have Vicky Kaeser with us.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me. Unfortunately, my video is not working, so you don't get to see what I look like. But I've been around enough that I'm sure a lot of you know what I look like. Um, so for me, I took Code Louisville classes in 2020, and back then we didn't used to have the pathways. So I did sampling different things what was available, and I just kept taking classes. And when I was ready, I feel like I have never graduated like you have, William. But um, so so I continued to taking classes, and in the meantime, I was attending networking and always was plugged in. And eventually, I felt like, okay, I'm ready. I'll start looking for a job. And so by then, I have met people, and I went to an event that suggested we bring our resumes, and basically that's when I wasn't hired right there on the spot, but we have traced it that's exactly where everything started. And they wouldn't let me go, and I stayed, and it was the best move ever. And I worked for El Toro, and I've been there for a year now, a year and 2 months.
Awesome. Thank you, Vicky. Well, I would love if the three of you, excuse me, and we can go in the same order for this one, then kind of mix it up. But if you can tell us a little bit more about how you got into tech. So what interested you in pursuing tech training? People come to Code Louisville, Code Kentucky for all different kinds of reasons. So sometimes we have folks who already have a little bit of experience. Sometimes it's very brand new and it's more of a drastic change. Can you talk a little bit about what you were doing when you enrolled in our courses and kind of how you picked which courses you were going to take? And then we'll move into a little bit about what the application process was like. So were you applying for tons of jobs? Did you apply for just a couple? What was your experience there? And William, if you don't mind kicking us off.
Yeah, absolutely. My interest in technology has been just me growing up in America in the 2000s, right? We introduced to the internet for the first time. I think my first HTML was in MySpace, right? So trying to make it look real cool. And, there was a little bit of who can make the coolest MySpace page, and it was all kind of in that basic HTML. But because I always had the perception that being a programmer meant that you were an AP super genius. You know what I mean? You were just one of those people that could just show up and, see it once and, a whiz, and just absolutely knew how to program. And so I was very discouraged and I moved away from that. And I actually became an electrician. So I was an industrial electrician for about 7 years, working outside every day, hard labor that you could probably imagine. And when the pandemic hit, there was a lot of kind of uncertainty in jobs for everybody, but especially for, sort of the labor in general. You're off some weeks, you're on, and it kind of made the pay very sporadic. There was obviously when you're constructing something, there's no remote option, you have to be there. And so whenever somebody wanted to shut something down, you just had to sit at home and hope that somebody, told you that you can come back and work. So being off for that long and that period of time, I started dabbling in code again. There was a couple of podcasts I was listening to at the time. Code Newbie, I recommend it if you are looking for something to listen to. It's kind of encouraging. It takes a bunch of people who are a lot like me, career changers, or people who are maybe, not a college kid anymore, looking to get into code, and how they, progressed on their journey. And I was very inspired and started doing that myself. Got into free code camp and a bunch of different resources like that. Stumbled upon Code Louisville just by searching for it. I heard some friends that said they had gone, and what was it exactly? I don't know. So I searched it, and it turned out to be a really great opportunity, obviously. And so hopped on there in this past semester, went through the web dev pathway, as we talked about, and was working the entire time. So, I'd work 10, 12-hour days, come home, take care of a kid, put her down, and then work for 2 or 3 hours, you know, until like midnight, and then wake up in the morning and try to do like 30 minutes or something in the morning and then head to work. And I did that for about a year, until I finally had felt like I saved up enough to maybe completely stop doing electrical work and just focus on the job hunt. I didn't, and I think this would go into like later advice I would give, but I didn't start looking for a job as I was graduating Code Louisville. I was looking for a job almost like 2 weeks after me starting Code Louisville proper in September, you know, of like creating a LinkedIn and having like a presence and trying to talk to people and going to meetups. You know, there's a couple of really cool meetups in town. There's a open source meetup, and there's a JavaScript meetup, and it's just a bunch of people who have jobs in programming, and just kind of putting your name out there and just talking and being friends and making connections. And then by the time I was graduating and I had like legitimate projects to show and represent, and I knew what I was talking about, you know, I hate to say that I was lucky, but you know, sometimes that's kind of how it is. You find the right person that wants to give you an opportunity and wants to give you an interview, and everything just kind of went up from there.
That's awesome. Thank you, William. Kevin, can you tell us a little bit, just again, about why you decided to pursue tech training, what you were doing at the time, and then kind of what your application process looked like?
Yeah, sure. So when I enrolled in Code Louisville, I was coming from the healthcare field. I thought I was going to go to PA school, and I was working as an EMT at the time. But then, you know, I was thinking about, you know, do I want to take on some more student loans like later down the future? And then I was looking at other careers and seeing, you know, is there like a career that I can get into where they don't necessarily need like a piece of paper, but I can show that I can do the work. And I narrowed it down to either welding or programming. And then I looked at welding and I was like, well, I would have to buy all this welding equipment to practice. And then when I looked at coding, I was like, well, it's all the resources are there online, and, you know, I can try it. You know, I can try coding, and if it doesn't work out, then, you know, I didn't spend any money. And then at the same time, I heard about Code Louisville. And in the past, like when I was in high school and in college, I did like try to dabble in trying to learn programming, but it was like by myself. And I kept getting like roadblocks and gave up. So I gave up like twice before. And then with Code Louisville, I was like, well, they'll have mentors, and, you know, maybe having somebody there to kind of bounce my ideas off, or if I get stuck, you know, I can ask questions, and it's like a little bit more structured of a program. So, you know, I applied, and kind of like Vicky, like me and her took like quite a few classes. Like I think once we like technically graduated after 2 courses, we just kept coming back and taking as many classes as we could. So at the time when I was in Code Louisville, like I reached back to like an employer that I worked with during like summer jobs. Like I would go on this job where I like repair like printers and laptops. It was more like a maintenance tech position. And, you know, I said like, hey, I'm learning programming and stuff. And then, so they kind of worked out a position for me where, you know, I was familiar with the hardware already. And then, so they kind of let me dabble into more of the software side. And, you know, I got to do more of like help desk support as well. And then, so I was doing that, and then I pursued coding full time through Code Louisville, and I did that for about 2.5 years. And then I was still taking classes as well. And then Code Louisville had like a job fair I think it was in April, and then went to it, you know, polished up my resume, and contacted Jenny to help me with my resume and LinkedIn and everything. Just try to utilize every resource that Code Louisville offered me. And I met somebody from Farm Credit, and I was lucky enough that he gave me an interview opportunity, and that's where I am now. But kind of my favorite thing about tech is, it's very accessible compared to other fields. Yeah, there's a lot more resources for everyone.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kevin. And Vicky, can you tell us a little bit about your background and kind of what drew you into tech?
Yes, Kevin, it was great having classes with you. So for me, I come from a financial background, and I already had a career, a degree, but life happens, and I had heard about Code Louisville years ago, when I was doing some mentoring at Iroquois Library, and they kept telling me, "Oh, Vicky, you will love this Code Louisville." I said, "Well, I really don't want to take somebody else's spot. I'm pretty well situated, but I would love to try something like that." And I just so vividly remember answering like that. In 2020, when I found myself having to go through 3 surgeries, no job, and the worst part for me was to think that maybe I will not even have health care. And as a single woman, that's frightening. And although I'm older than William and Kevin, I still have a lot of life to live. And so I thought, well, health, what am I going to do? And I'd be darned, I received an email from Code Louisville letting me know that they were going to have a class and that I had to finish certain classes. And that doesn't guarantee you anything. At least it guarantees you finish, and then you go against other students, and then maybe you get in. I thought, well, what do I have to lose? This is something I wanted to do before, and I never had the opportunity, so I'm gonna try. But I had no clue what I was getting myself into, because I have used accounting systems, financial systems, but I had my IT people dealing with my softwares and stuff, and so I had no idea that I needed to know all these things. And so I went through those, I think it was 3 months where I had to do all this pre-work. And they come back and and I barely made it. I finished and I barely made it. And so, because I had a surgery, so it's like, okay, well, we'll get it done somehow. And so I remember that was in March, and they said, "Oh, congratulations, you made it, except that there's only going to be only so many students will be allowed to enter the May class, and the other ones will have to wait till, I don't know, August, July." And I said, "Oh, darn, if I don't get into the one in May, there's just no way in hell that I can be without a job this long." So then but I said, "Well, what the heck, I'll just wait and see." Well, I got accepted for the one in May. So once I got accepted for the one in May, it was no turning back. It was a class, but it was struggle. For those of you who think that you're not going to make it, you're going to feel like that, and it's okay to feel like that, but just keep showing up. Just keep doing the work, because I feel like that every single day. And I was in the best of mental capacity or physical capacity, and I would cry sometimes. And I mean, God bless all the Code Louisville administrators because they were wonderful to me, and the mentors were wonderful, and my peers were wonderful. And a lot of them carry me, And so anyway, so mm, three courses later and 3 surgeries later, I still kept going to Code Louisville until I was literally physically and mentally ready to go look for a job. But I will still attend a networking, even if it was online. And so people got to know me. And sometimes I spoke quite bluntly on some of these programs where other speakers had something to say. And I think it was one of those where people all of a sudden were calling me and they wanted my resume. And so if you believe in yourself and you're putting the work and you're putting yourself out there, and please do have your LinkedIn ready, your resume ready, all these things, put yourself through whatever you need to put yourself through I was lucky because I was already in good shape to talk to anyone about anything, and I had a good resume, and my fear was that they would not want someone that was as old as I was, and a female and a Hispanic at that, and so I had some doubts of my capabilities. So even with that, once I got to know people and they got to know me, they wanted me. They saw some value in having me in their company. So, and El Toro was the one that I chose. They chose me, but I chose them too, because I struggle with, do I go back to doing what I was doing before? Because I know what pay is going to be. And it was going to be quite a bit more than if I would start as a new code person, because I didn't have a background. But at the end, after having all those resumes, when I compare one with the others, the people that were going to pay me more money did not want me as a person. They wanted me as for my abilities, and they had no interest in getting to know who I was. The people that I'm working for now, they were interested in building me up so I can become the person that works for them, that can deliver. But they were very much interested in who I am as a person. So I value the people I work for, and I feel very valued as well. So don't settle, don't quit. And if you ever feel that you're like, you're in your last straw and you're gonna quit, call me, email me, because you don't have to give up. That's my story.
That's amazing, Vicky. Thank you. And one of my favorite things, I know we'll get a lot of emails or hear from people like on the first night or first few weeks of class saying, I don't really know what I'm doing. Is this program for me? Like, I don't know if I can do it. But you can. And I think our panelists tonight especially are such good beacons of light in that sense, and that they really put in the work. And it's not easy. We're not going to lie to you and say that it is. But I think that they've all really done a great job of kind of forging their own path. So on that note, what are some things, panelists, that helped motivate you to continue learning when it got tough? So I know from my experience, I did Code Louisville as a student, and it was hard. I had, like Vicky, many tears over some of the learning, getting GitHub. I think I saw some nightmares of. But what made you all both want to start learning and continue once it got tough, and once maybe it clicked, oh, this isn't just a super easy thing that I can pick up right away. It may have taken some work. What kept you all going? And whoever wants to start can start.
Yeah, I think you know, when I went through the front end, the web development portion, it was pretty easy once you started doing the free code camps and like the preliminary sort of stuff, because everything is so available online, and there's tons of YouTube videos and tons of sandbox sort of modules to help you like just code it out right in the web browser. But once you started kind of like getting into the nitty gritty of like JavaScript and how Node works and databases, there are still tons of resources out there, but they become a lot more confusing, and sometimes they're wrong. And there's not these really like well-developed infographics videos, that help you along. And one of the things that helped me while I was actually learning it was to find something that I was interested in. And so, doing a web application about, fintech or like financial technology, that is interesting for some people, but it is not interesting for me. And so I was like, I am not going to learn how to, learn all of these methods in JavaScript, trying to do something that I don't care about. Right. But I did love, games. I love board games and I love like role-playing games. So I was like, well, what if I did something around that? And that really helped me, like having that interest of, oh, I know that it should be doing this, and I really want it to look like this. It kind of helped continue on when things got tough, because you were motivated and passionate about what you were building. But also not being afraid to like take a second and step back. When you are not going to figure it out today, stop, go to bed, wake up the next morning and try to figure it out, or try to break it apart into smaller pieces. It isn't hard, it is hard, and it's hard to continue going when you feel like you've hit a brick wall. But the only way to do that is to just continue pushing forward, right? I mean, like if you're working out and you hit a plateau and you can't lift weight that's, any more, you still have to kind of work at it and just kind of like a little bit at a time until eventually you get it. But the thing that I didn't believe was true, that ended up being very true, was that it's going to click, right? Like, the map method in JavaScript, which, you may know or may not know, it was very hard for me to figure out exactly how that worked. And I kept doing a problem and I would get the problem right, but I struggled through it and I still didn't understand what was going on. And then one day it just clicked. There was something that was explained in just the right way. And it just, my brain had made all of the connections that I had been working on for the month that I was trying to figure this out. And then eventually the pathway was just there, right? And so, yeah, the trick is to just keep moving on at it, find something you're passionate about, and yeah, you got to keep lifting those weights.
Kevin or Vicky, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, that sounded so. Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
you go.
Okay, sure. Yeah, what helped me was I would have to remind myself when it got tough to just compare myself to me yesterday instead of somebody else that I saw on YouTube. Because, if you go on YouTube, there's videos full of people saying, they did this boot camp in a month and they got a job right away. And, I was going through the material, and then there'd be some days where, it really made sense to me. And then some days it was just like not comprehend it. And then I looked down the road, I was like, oh, how am I going to get a job if I don't understand this and this, and I have no idea what this is? And what helped me was I had like a little notepad on my computer, and I constantly would just write every time I learned something new, or every time I felt like I made a little bit of progress. I just kind of write that down, and it was like my list of accomplishments. And it's not going to be like something that will wow an employer, but to me, it was like something that I was proud of, because, yesterday I did not understand what a variable or what a string was. And then today, it clicked. And, I would just kind of remind myself, like, when it got tough and I felt like I didn't know anything at all, I'd like pull up that little notepad file, and then I could physically see that, like, okay, like I am learning stuff. Like, piece by piece, chunk by chunk, you know. And yeah. And what also helped me was anytime somebody was talking, because, you know, the tech field is full of jargon. So it's like, you know, they'll be saying something and then there's like 50 acronyms. I would just kind of write down anything that I didn't know what they were saying at all, even if it was like 90% of the sentence. You know, if they said something like AWS, like back then I had no idea what that was. So I like write down in my file like AWS, and then later that night I would just go on Google and just kind of search like, what is AWS, just like a very high level overview. And then I, you know, would try to help myself or tell myself like, I don't need to understand exactly what it is, but I just slowly build like the context. That's good. Like I noticed that AWS, you know, keeps getting mentioned whenever they mention about cloud computing. And then so slowly I like connect the dots. And even though I don't understand like, you know, maybe what it is, I know like in reference. And then slowly you kind of build like this mental map. And then I think that really helped me get over the imposter syndrome, because I was like absorbing knowledge piece by piece instead of like trying to consume everything all at once. So that's what I encourage everyone to do. Just write down your little daily accomplishments, and, you know, look back and be proud of, you know, the progress that you made, because it adds up over time.
Well, those two are great examples. For me, I was just determined that it wasn't going to beat me up, because I felt beat up every day, every day, all day. But I would go to bed and wake up and just start doing it all over again. I was the type of student that I wrote all the videos and all the readings. I took notes. So I have tons of logs of all the stuff I wrote, because my brain only works if I write down things. And so I was drinking out of a fire hose. It was a lot. But I understood that no matter how much I was taking in, there was no way that I could know it all. And then I had to do the extra work of writing it down. And if I would skip that step, nothing was going to stick to my brain. And so I would have to settle for what did stuck to my brain, and then just have to do it again. And that was, I mean, I swear to you all, it was a struggle every day. So, but I guess I kept telling people, I said, I guess I must like punishment, because I kept coming back. But I mean, I just kept coming back. And you know, and I still have, I mean, kudos for Kevin that he got over the imposter syndrome. I still carry it with me, but I'm friends with it now. Because at work, you know, it would be just like Code Louisville. I keep telling everyone, now that I'm working full time at this job, it's like being at Code Louisville. Every day is something new. Every day is a struggle, but every day I'm happy to be here. And yes, I mean, now I took a course in AWS, and I didn't go and get the certification because I was never going to deal with that mess. Well, guess what I'm doing now? I'm dealing with that mess, and I'm still not certified, but eventually I might be. But this is something that came across work, and they needed someone, and all of a sudden, because I'm into detail and no one else is interested in looking at detail, now that's my task. So you just never know. So take whatever you can and just keep coming back.
I think that's really great advice. And actually that kind of resonated. I had a call with a employer partner of ours, American Printing House for the Blind, last week, and they were saying how accessibility is such a huge thing for them because they're dealing with visually impaired audiences. And they'll have people come to interview that don't even know what accessibility is. And it's really clear that they haven't tried to research it. And she said, even just kind of knowing some of the keywords, knowing a few of like the hot items, if they can say, oh, well, I wasn't totally sure. I don't have a lot of experience, but I researched it. Here's what I know, that just spoke volumes about those folks. So I think all of the panelists kind of said it in different ways, but you don't have to know everything. You're never going to know everything. But showing that you can take the initiative to learn it or to figure it out is huge, and it'll really take you far. So we started to get a couple of questions in chat. The one I'm going to start with, and I'm going to kind of pair it with another question that we sort of touched on as well. But Sky was wondering about how long you have to work with the language until you feel really comfortable with it. And my kind of question back to the panelists is, do you feel really comfortable with it? I know imposter syndrome, for those who don't know, is very rampant, especially in tech. So that's having the skills to do something, but maybe feeling like you don't. A lot of times it happens with our students because you all are making such a huge career change in such a short amount of time. So if you all could just let us know a little bit about kind of your experience picking up a new tech language, how long it takes until you kind of feel like you really know what you're doing with it, or at least kind of know what you're doing with it. And then how you've been able to overcome some of that imposter syndrome that comes with that.
Yeah, I can go. So wanted to clarify, I did not get over my imposter syndrome, but like Vicky said, I became friends with it and made peace with it, because that's kind of the nature of our field. And I'm kind of in a similar position. Like before, I felt really confident, and then I just started a new job, and it's like in a different language than I was working with before. And then so now I'm kind of picking up like a different framework and everything else. And sometimes it's overwhelming, but what I remind myself is, they hired me for my skills to learn, not for that particular language. And going back to the question, how long do you have to work with the language? I'd say, you can never really like master the language, but if you feel like you can do enough where you can build stuff or get to the point where you don't know it, but you know how to find out how to Google it. I feel like that's when, for me, it started kind of picking up the pace. That's when I felt like, okay, I don't know how to do this, but I know that I can figure it out because I have the basic syntax. And if I go on to like Stack Overflow with my question and they give me, examples in code, that I would be able to read the code and figure out how to build what I want to do with it.
Yeah, Vicky brought it up, the idea of drinking from the water hose, and you never stop drinking from the fire hose, so to speak. Sorry, the fire hose rather. You just kind of get used to figuring out how to like not drown, because it is always constantly like something new, right? If my job was, making static HTML pages, I'd be like, yeah, absolutely, you could totally master this, but it's not. It gets a lot harder. But the beautiful part about it is that a good employer, which I'm confident that all of us work at, they say this person can learn how to do this, right? This person can learn how to ask questions. This person can learn how to do what needs to be done for this particular product that they're working on. And that's what's important, especially for a junior level position, which is, I'm assuming, most of us are looking for. But yeah, I mean, I would like to say the basics, and that would take maybe 6 months to a year, right? And when I think about my interview questions where I had to like answer them off the cuff and not look them up or anything like that, like they were all basic JavaScript questions, and that sort of stuff, I think that you can learn, And like Kevin said, you'll never master it, right? I mean, you can spend forever working on it and feel like you're just on the surface. The senior dev that I was working with today, was asking a fairly basic question, like, how do I put two arrays together? Should I do the spread operator or should I do concatenate? And, those are pretty sort of like standard sort of JavaScript methods, if you're doing the web development sort of track. But even he had to kind of look it up and think through it, right? But those basics of, whatever language you're working with and whatever sort of pathway you're going to, those are what the interviewers are going to ask. And so I would say that takes about 6 months or so of like really working with it and really trying to figure it out, and quizzing yourself. But you're never going to be totally comfortable with the language, but you are going to feel confident enough to be able to convey the basics to an interviewer. That's
my answer to that will be, it depends on the individual. It depends on your background, how you think, how you learn. It also depends on where you work and what you're going to be working with. Because, every time I try to sit down and just do some code, it's never about just sit down and do some code. There's an app I have to bring in. Am I dealing with Mac? Am I dealing with Linux? What am I dealing with? Is this package needs to be installed or what? And, there's just so many variables. So it's never about just the language. And it keeps changing. So it depends on when you become comfortable, or at least it's comfortable enough to think that that's enough for you to be brave and go look for that job. And it's okay to not be an expert, and for you to be okay if you get rejection, because you will get rejection, but you need to accept it, because there's a lot of people looking for those jobs, and different people are looking for different things. And sometimes, you just click well with some teams. And so, and they're looking at you not just for your skills of coding, but your personality and how you might actually get along with that team. Because those are going to be your resources when you get in. And everybody wants you to succeed once you get there.
Absolutely. And I think all three panelists kind of touched on this, but we have had so many students who learn one coding language through us, but then once they get a job, it's in something completely different, because the company that's hiring them was impressed by their basic skill level, their problem-solving ability, thought they would be a good culture fit to add to their team. So there really is so much more beyond just knowing a specific language. And I definitely encourage you all to keep that in mind. So Derek also had a question in the chat. He was wondering how your employers have worked well with your adaptation into their environment and jobs. As we mentioned, you all are beginners or more entry junior level folks. So how have they dealt with that transition? Is there mentorship in place? Do they have any, tools or resources for you all to use? How do you solve problems as you're on the job?
In my at Humana, my day-to-day sort of experience with starting out is unfortunately, if you like Pluralsight videos, guess what? You're going to continue on when you get a job. They're going to give you some more Pluralsight videos in whatever language you're learning in. It never stops. I'm sorry if you don't like Pluralsight, but one of the best things that they've done is given you a senior dev to work with, is for my experience rather, and small manageable projects that you can probably work on. One of my first things I did on my own was, change the email addresses to, whenever an email is automatically sent out, changing that around to where it was sent to somebody else instead, or changing a small piece of HTML and CSS so it gave the right, the footnotes to the right, person that we were trying to credit for the reference we were making. And so it's little small copy edit things like that, little HTML things like that. And then when I'm working on bigger problems, I am pair programming with a senior dev, which means for better or for worse, we're on a Zoom call all day long. He's on the screen, I'm on the other screen, and we have the code in front of us, and we're literally typing it out together. He'll write the tests and I'll try to implement it, or he'll try to implement the code and I'll try to write the test. And we're always communicating with each other on not just how we're implementing it, but why we're trying to do it this way instead of another way. And, because of that, things are slower or faster depending on how well we know. So yeah, they've really worked with helping me get into what a enterprise level programming job looks like by like teaming you up with a senior dev or a senior team and like working side by side with them until you start to get more confident to do stuff on your own.
Yeah, so at my new work, I got put on a team and it had a lot of experience among the developers. So I have 2 senior developers that, they understand that I'm new. I'm new, relatively new to programming. I'm not, fresh new, but I'm new to their system. So they understand that, I'm gonna ask questions about, why is this wired up like this, or, what does this service do? Because I think that happens whenever you go to a new company. Even if you're pretty senior, you still have to learn their programs and what they do. Yeah, like William said, they do have like a Pluralsight playlist for me to follow, and sometimes I find it helpful, and some I watch and it doesn't really help me understand as much, and then I'll just jump on YouTube and try to find a different way to learn the same concept. And they're very understanding that I'm here to learn, and as long as I'm asking questions, then they understand that I'm making progress. And they're not going to fault me for not knowing, because I'm lucky that it's like a very team mentality. So, if I'm the weakest link, then they fail as a team. So, they're going to do everything in their power to prop me up as well and get me up to speed with the rest of the team.
At El Toro, it's the same thing. We have, I was put into a team. It's probably the best team that they have there. And feel very lucky to be there. Some very amazing tech people, and not just as tech individuals, but as human beings. And so I'm lucky to be there. They know, or they knew that I was coming in, where I was coming in. And actually, I started as an apprentice, and within a month, they gave me a full-time position. So that was very rewarding, nerve-wracking and rewarding at the same time. They give us a lot for onboarding that you basically just do on your own, but you can ask anyone in the team for any help. And ever since then, we have evolved. We went from being one team, kind of with separate people doing different things, to now we're 4 teams within one team. And so we're much better organized, but everyone is still more than willing to help. Today, one of my tickets that I got from internal clients that we service, I got it, and I got an error, and all of a sudden I threw it out to everyone, and by the end of the day it was resolved. And I have an appointment tomorrow with one of the seniors, just so we can talk some more about what was all that about. Because even though it got resolved, I feel like I need to understand better. And so they're more than willing to give me the time, as long as I'm willing to do some pre-work before I go and just sit in front of somebody and ask questions. So it's all about working on a team. They understand. They've been there, by the way. They've been there too, because no matter how good they are, they were not this good when they got started. Because it's not necessarily just about how much you know about that code, or it's about what is in that company that Pluralsight could not teach you. And so, but yes, they have an amazing onboarding in terms of, it's not necessarily what's on paper and on Confluence and all that stuff, but it's on the people. The people know that you will be needing them eventually, and they're waiting to see how long it's going to take you to give up and start asking questions.
Absolutely. Well, that kind of leads me into another question. So I know when you're watching movies, or like if you see memes of coders, it's usually like a white guy with a hoodie over his head and he's chugging Mountain Dew and like Skittles are all over, or like Takis or something, and he's in a dark cave and he's coding away just like 24/7. I don't think that's what it's like in real life. I live with a coder. It seems fairly different. Can you all talk a little bit about maybe what like a typical day or couple days looks like? And then along with that, we had a question from Elizabeth about what's your favorite and least favorite part of your day-to-day job as a developer?
Yeah, what was the first part of the question?
Just what your day-to-day looks like. So like, are you coding 24/7? Are there other things involved? And then what your most favorite and least favorite parts are.
Right. Yeah. And I do work with both types of developers. I work with, there's one guy who shows up and he's like in a, just a t-shirt and a plain computer, like he has no stickers on his laptop. He doesn't have a fancy like mechanical keyboard. He doesn't have any of that stuff. He just types on his regular old laptop all day. And I think that he's a madman. And then on the other side, there's a guy who, he showed me his display at home and he has legitimately 8 monitors just like around, it's like the Matrix or something, and so, yeah, he's like way over the top. I hope to be somewhere in the middle. So, yeah, I mean, it's just depend on like your style or whatever. But yeah, the day-to-day is mostly normal, right? It's an 8-hour day. Sometimes you might work late if there's a fire or some sort of like serious situation you got to get done right now. You show up at 8, have a stand up at 9. I work with my senior dev all day. We have like a list of problems to do on the product. As our product has recently started going to market testing, so we're sending it out to like a small number of people, and so we're getting that feedback back. And as it comes, we're like changing things, or as the analytics team says, well, actually, we want this information pulled in. We're rewriting the code and refactoring to make that look the way that they would want it. So there's all sorts of like little things that we're working on, even though we're not working on a brand new project that we're building up. And when I'm at my house, I work kind of hybrid because Humana has a pretty dope office downtown. And when I'm at the house, my favorite part of the day is being able to take a second and just spend 30 minutes and go walk outside, right? Like at my other jobs, they were timing you 100% of the time. Like 10 minutes is 10 minutes, like get back to work. But when you have like that freedom of a remote job, you're able to just kind of like slip away for a second and come back. On a technical side, my favorite thing is when all of my tests pass and you see a bunch of green. My least favorite is when you see a bunch of red, nothing's working. Why isn't this here? And then, yeah, it's been a great job. Yeah. The day-to-day is very laid back. And as long as you're getting the work done and you're showing that you're productive, it's almost like they don't care. I don't want to go as far as say they don't care. They certainly do. But, they're about, have you produced code today? Yes. All right. It's laid back, everything's fine. And so, yeah, that would be my day to day.
Yeah, my day to day is also pretty similar. Show up, like get to work at 8, and then there's a meeting at 9. Not a meeting, but more of a stand up. And I think you guys are in Code Global, so you guys practice the stand up, where basically what a stand up is, where you just tell the whole team what you're working on, and if there's anything that's blocking you, or if it's just to let the whole team know that if there's something they can help with, and try to keep tabs with what all the progress that's going on with the team in general. But so every week they pick up my team picks up a feature, and then it'll get assigned to one of the developers, and then pretty much through the week you have about 4 or 5 days to write it, depending on how big the feature is. And you write the feature, you pretty much are at your computer coding, and you could take breaks, no one's kind of tying you down to the desk. You work how you work best, and they're pretty good at that. And then once you finish up your code, then you'll use Git or GitHub, depending on the company, to kind of push it, and then it gets passed off to somebody who's like a quality assurance, and then they will do the testing and then get it prepared for deployment and release. So that's kind of like the typical week workflow. And my favorite and least favorite thing is probably like troubleshooting. I like to troubleshoot, but then also at the same time, if it's really hard, then it becomes my least favorite. Why I like it is, if we get a customer that gets an error, I like looking at the logs, looking at the network tab, and seeing like, oh, why did the request turn out bad? And then, trying to trace it down, and, it feels like you're a detective. But then sometimes when you get into, you trace it down, and then you realize that it's not like something that was in your control, but it was like an external service, like this service, your company's service called out to another service, and their service is acting up, and then so that kind of you kind of hit a bump in the road, and then you can't really continue with your investigation anymore, and so sometimes that's frustrating. But I think in general it's pretty fun. I get to play detective at work, and I get paid for it.
Yeah, it's a great feeling to get paid for something you like to do. So same here, except that we have 2-week sprints. So we do like a pre-meeting on a Friday to be sure we discuss what it is that we're thinking we might be putting on the agenda. And on Monday, we kind of put it all together. And so we start the sprint on Tuesday, and pretty much, and of course, it's not just what we want. It depends on what the work is, and everybody kind of divvy. We all kind of like have our own little areas. So we kind of make our work, but other work is already pre-made for us, so we have to respond to that. And so we put them in as our tickets for us to keep working on it throughout the week. And then we also assign about how much time will it take us to get it done, so that we don't put too much on our table or too little. And if it's too little, then somebody else will always add something else up. And we do the stand up every morning to be sure that there's no blockers, and what you did the day before, what you're working on today. And for me, the least favorite is feeling like I'm not productive. a lot of what I do sometimes is because I'm doing research. I feel like I'm not producing anything, but I'm very much productivity driven. Um, I feel that that's what makes me feel like I'm part of the team, but I am producing on things that someone else is not able to produce. So I've been reminded of that. So like William, I even at work, I feel like I can get up and go get that cup of coffee and just walk around. We have a gym, and they bring us snacks and bring a lot of donuts. I have gained so much weight because these people are so good to us. But so I guess that would be my favorite, my not so favorite thing. But yeah, I like it there.
Love it. Unfortunately, our at-home pantry doesn't have as many snacks as my office used to, but I guess that's on me. We had a question from Robert that I think gets brought up quite a bit. So he's wondering if most or any of your coworkers have a traditional four-year tech degree. And if so, kind of what does that relationship look like? So like, are they kind of skeptical of boot camp people coming in or self-taught people coming in? Is it welcoming? Or what are your experiences there? So kind of in a nutshell, what your experience is going into a workplace, and if the majority of the other employees do have tech degrees.
Sure. Yeah. Sorry. My senior dev does have a CS degree. He is pretty laid back, and his sort of mantra is that if you can do it, then it doesn't matter. He was able to go get a CS degree, and it was something that was important to him. But yeah, he'll never be the person that kind of gatekeeps the concept of being a developer from somebody who doesn't have a degree. So I'm sure that they're out there. I'm sure that there are jerks out there who think that you can't code unless you know, C- or whatever they teach in college. But most people that I've met that have those degrees are very laid back, and they're very accepting of people who don't. As long as you know it, you know it.
Yeah, I would agree as well. Most people at my work also have like a degree in CS or CIS, but everyone's really laid back, and all they care about is if you're able to do the work that they hired you for. And I went to school and got a 4-year degree, and then after I got a master's degree, and I always joke with my wife. I was like, the best benefit that I got from getting my master's degree is never being intimidated by somebody else who has a master's degree. Because, I got the degree, but I felt like, I wasn't an expert. I was definitely not a master. So I kind of remind myself as well when I'm at work, like a degree, it's a piece of paper, and, what really matters is if they're able to apply the knowledge. And if you're there and you're working with everyone else, then you're as equal as them, and you're able to apply the knowledge, and you're able to learn as well.
We don't have any of those bad attitudes in where I work. Everybody is very we all appreciate one another for our own talents. No, the degree, it doesn't matter.
I love that. And I know in talking with employers, we'll talk to some that still are very strict about it, and they have to have that 4-year tech degree. We have others that say, we want them to have a bachelor's, but it can be in anything. And then we have that third pool that we really seek out of folks that, like I think all three panelists really reflected, if you can do the job, we want you on our team. And that would be my approach for sure. So I'm glad that we're seeing more employers move to that school of thought as well. We had a couple questions from Tina in the chat, and I think you all touched really well on the productivity question in answering what your daily and kind of weekly schedule looks like. But another question she had was, are you salaried or hourly in your role? She was wondering if there's a lot of overtime to get things done or mandatory overtime. So I know overtime can be a big thing in tech, as well as being on call, and sometimes that requires overnight on call or availability. So I guess kind of two-part, are you salaried or hourly? And then what does your maybe weekly hour quota look like?
So for me, I'm salaried, and right now I'm pretty new, so there hasn't been a lot of overtime that I need to put on. It's just for me, for my own knowledge. I want to learn as fast as I can to contribute to the rest of my team. But I would say I'm lucky that I work in a company where they have like a very good work-life balance, and then they told me up front, if I feel like I'm, trying to do my work like after hours and stuff, come talk to them, and they will try to balance it out, because they try to assign me the work that they feel like is appropriate at my level.
I am salary as well, full benefits. And what else was the question? What else do they need to know?
Wondering if there's anything like mandatory overtime or like on call, kind of like how many hours a week you typically
Yeah,
do.
no, I go in at 8:30, because when I first started, they said be there at 8:30. So I've been going every day at 8:30. Other coworkers show up later at 9 or whatever, but everybody does their own thing, as long as you're there for meetings. And we're hybrid too, so we can either be at work or at home. And as long as you get your work done and you show up for the meetings, you're all good. And I haven't worked any overtime. I don't expect overtime, but I do work. Like if I have something that needs to get done, I don't mind staying the extra 15 minutes, 30 minutes or whatever, or maybe pick something up that my boss cannot talk to me about it during the day, but maybe we'll connect at night, just so that we can get it resolved, or I can get more clarification or whatever. Weekends, we never really connect over the weekend. They have a very good family work balance too, just like Kevin's. So yeah. And I'm sure if they needed me to do something, I will be the first one to know, because that's what my job is. But unless there is a fire, we don't, unless you want to. But that's the personal preference.
Yeah, for me, I'm actually hourly. The contract employee sort of thing just is the way that is. But I only ever put in 40 hours as far as getting paid. There are pretty much on a weekly basis, I do work a little bit of overtime as kind of like being a full stack engineer. Like I'm responsible for not just the development of the product, but like pushing it to deployment. And sometimes that deployment doesn't happen until things are really slow, which are it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon or 11 o'clock at night. And so when we have to push to production, like I have to be online to help move that along. Depending on the severity, it may be 11 o'clock at night. You get off work and then you come back at 11 and push something to production because no one's going to be online. So if you have to reset the at the site, it's not going to, mess up anybody's, sort of workflow. So I do work late, but I always get it back. And I think that's the key. Like, I'm only putting in 40 hours because if I'm working till 5, then everyone's cool if I don't come in until 10 o'clock the next day. You're always kind of like getting it back here and there. Certainly if it became a consistent thing, everyone's totally okay with like marking that time down. But yeah, as a full stack engineer, and I'm sure for most people, if there's a fire, you're kind of always kind of there because it's your baby, it's your product. You have to make sure that it's always up and running, So it's maybe a little different, but it's typically the same.
That's fairly reasonable in what I've kind of heard across the industry as well. And I think Kevin kind of alluded to, if it does feel like you have too much and you're constantly overworking, that may just be an issue with the workload itself. And there might be things that can be assigned to other people or that other folks better equipped can help you out with. So I would say definitely don't be afraid to speak up. If you are in that new job and it kind of feels overwhelming, there are usually things that the team can do to sort of ease some of that. Can you all talk, kind of switching gears, talk a little bit about maybe pick one project that you made, whether it was on your own or through one of the courses, and especially if it's one that like really stood out in an interview. But can you just tell us about a project that you made through class or on your own that you were really excited about, or that had something really cool as part of it? And then especially if there is any tie-in to the interviewing process, kind of what that looked like.
Okay, well, let me go first on this one. When William said that he find it boring to work on financial stuff, I'm the opposite. But I did not want to produce anything that was financial. I wanted to stretch myself. Because, when you work with numbers, it's easy to kind of come up with the end result. But so I decided to do a lot of projects that had to do with demographics or social economics, food insecurities, the true data about abortions, stuff like that. And a lot of my projects, my final one that I did was the abortion thing. And so not too many people got to see it because I didn't present it or any of that. But normally my projects were presented at the end of the course. And most people enjoy one more than any of them, which was the social vulnerability. And I use Jupyter, and it was very well documented. And so, but the one that I did do that was related to financial was I made sort of like a mini turbo program where you will tell the system what your income was, and then my app will tell you how much you actually owe the government for that particular year. And so in my interview, my current boss was interviewing me with several other people. And she couldn't help herself, but she said, I know she did not copy this code because it wasn't that it was brilliant. What it was is that it's the same information over and over. So I copy and pasted. Once I had the code to get the first, if you were single or married or divorced or whatever, I just copy and pasted the same over and over. And she, to this day, she still remembers how I came about to be in her team, because she said, at least I know she did not copy this code. So she saw that maybe there was some originality there. And the other gentleman that had a lot to do with me getting in there, he loved the passion that I showed through those assignments. And that's why I was passionate about it, and that's what got me through them too.
Yeah, so I also had a finance type project that I'm really proud of. Me and my wife, we started tracking on all of our expenses for like budgeting and stuff. So what we did was, like, at the end of every month, we would pull up all of our like credit card accounts and then go line by line and copy them into this like Google Sheets, and we would categorize it, and then that way we would know, how much we're spending each month on each category. But we had like a lot of accounts, and there was a lot of transactions, and I was like, just reading them off from one screen and typing it off another, and it was very error prone. I was like falling asleep because there's so many lines, and it was just like it would take like an hour or two every month to do that. And then once I learned like enough programming through Code Louisville, I was like, okay, like this is a huge pain point in my life. Let me see if I could do something about it. And I found out, like, if you go to your bank accounts, like you can export the transactions as like a CSV file. And then I would take all the CSV files, and then I had like a little JavaScript program that would consolidate all of them into one big spreadsheet that I could just import into Google Sheets. And then so what took like an hour became like 5 minutes. Once I wrote the code took like a couple of days for me to figure out how to like hook everything up. But once it was done, then like from now on, every month, like I just kind of put all the files into one folder, hit the button to run it, and then I get the spreadsheet that I'm looking for, and then I can go in and categorize everything. And that was something that it made me realize, like, oh wow, like me doing this as a human, it was very error prone. It took forever, and now that I have the power of programming, like I could just make the machine do it, and it's not likely to make as many mistakes as I do, and it does it like way faster than I ever could. And then so it made me, that was when like the light bulb hit. I was like, oh wow, like this is actually like a real problem that I solved in my life. And during interviews, they would ask, what are some projects that you've taken up, and I brought up this one. And I think it, because I was able to talk about it, because it was such a pain point in my life that I was able to solve, then they could see that I knew what I was talking about, because I built it, and that I was able to solve a problem. And that's basically what programming is. It's just problem solving, and then you translate it into like computer language.
Yeah, I certainly wasn't trying to shame people in fintech. It's just, how it is. Here are my projects. I've just posted them in the chat. Both, the DM Cabinet of Curiosities is my keystone project for the web development too, which is, if you're in the web development or any pathway, it'd be like the final project you turn in. It was about taking two monsters from the Dungeons and Dragons manual and mixing them together. I am a huge nerd, and so it was just super fun for me to do. You can make, a dragon goblin or whatever you want. It's all there. It's super fun. I had a great time making it. It randomizes the statistics, and it does a bunch of like algorithms and stuff behind the scenes so that it is like a truly like new creature. But yeah, that was my keystone project. I was very happy with it, and they're all like live hosted. So you can like actually interact with it. You can go to the GitHub and interact with it. The second one was a team project that I had with some of the people in my class. I felt like I could take on a little bit of extra work. And so I tried to work with some teammates that were doing the same module pathway that I was. And like together, we created a pretty amazing project that took the Spotify API, which is, music, took it all down. You could search for a song and put it on a top tracks list. And then from there, all of the users could interact with it and upvote it or downvote it. And so we wanted to find out like what was Code Kentucky, Code Louisville's favorite song. And they immediately shot Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley all the way up to the top. I think before we cleared the database, it was Cotton Eye Joe, like that remix version or something. So it was the internet worked and it was awesome. But both of those are like live, sort of like hosted on the internet that you can interact with. And so if I could give any advice to somebody, especially in web development, if you want to stick out, it needs to be a full stack project. And so both of these projects kind of fit in that sort of category. And they're both on my resume. And I think they impressed employers. At least I was impressed with them. And yeah, that's what I would say. Both are super fun. I love them.
I love it. And I always love asking that question because you can really tell when people are passionate about their project and excited. We hear time and again from employers that they'll get resumes from like boot camp grads that are going through and everybody has the same project and it's very streamlined. And I think our students are kind of a breath of fresh air sometimes because you all have such varied projects and interests and things that you're sharing. I mean, we've seen all kinds of really cool projects over the years, and they really do help you to stand out, both with employers at networking events, and just being able to talk about it is huge. So I know we're coming close to 7:30. We're a little bit over. I just want to end with the panelists. If you can give us one piece of advice that you would give to a new student or a current student in the program, what would that be? And it can be in any realm. It can be job seeking, project based, anything that you all think would be useful that you wish you had known as you were going in.
I'll give the last piece of advice. You're going to learn all of the stuff. So I'm not going to talk about like how to learn and all that. What I'm going to say is you're here to get a job. Passing Code Louisville is not going to automatically give you a job, right? So you have to like start searching now. So if you don't have a LinkedIn, you should have had one yesterday, and you need to start connecting with everybody and talking with everyone. And like next week, with Scarlett from Booksource, like that is a person who actively hires people from Code Louisville. So like you need to be there. You need to like follow her on LinkedIn. You need to like everything that she likes, and that's the kind of point I'm trying to make is like, if you are going to stand out from like the millions of other people that are trying to get jobs in tech, like you need to be a person and not just a profile or a resume. Like they need to know who you are. So when I say like, go to these events or like the meetups or, like people on LinkedIn, like I know like social media is like a bunch of like, it is what it is, but it is the nature of the beast, and you have to interact with people and you have to connect with people. And yeah, I mean, I know it stinks for a more introverted person, but you have to like find some sort of mental capacity to, interact, talk, connect, and, don't just do it when you're looking for a job. Like do it now while you're not necessarily ready for a job, so that when it's time to, get one, this person doesn't think to themselves, oh, this person's just coming to me to find a job. But like, this is a human being who has worked hard and has really good projects. And like, I know them and I trust them to interview them. Does that make sense? I hope it does. But yeah, it's starting that connection process now and being everywhere all the time. Like every opportunity you have before you, you take it and try to say hello to somebody.
So my advice is to just leverage all the free resources that we have at Code Louisville. I think, like if you're just trying to learn how to code, like the learning material is out there. There's like, 100 different versions that'll teach you how to learn code. But I think the best thing about Code Louisville is like you're in a community of people who are trying to have a common goal of learning programming, getting a job. And so, my biggest advice is like, try to be up to date and engaged on Slack. That's what really helped me like absorb a lot of information. I know people that, go through the course and, they follow the material on Pluralsight and they're caught up with videos, but, they would just kind of click on their Slack like maybe once a week. But I feel like, that's where all the activity is on Slack. And then, so for me, I had like a little bookmark on my browser for Code Level Slack. And then every day I would just click on that and, see what's going on, like any new posts, if there's a tech event, or if my class, somebody in my class had a question, even if it was something that I didn't have a problem with, I try to look at it and see if it's something I can help with, or if I understood what their problem was, and then the mentor like chimed in and offered a solution if I understood what was going on. Like there's a lot of little learnings that happens in the threads, and that might go away if you only check it once a week. But that's kind of my tip. It's really about the community and networking. Code Louisville brings that to us. I'm very introverted, so networking does not come easy, but I was lucky enough that I'm in this community that, employers would come to us, they're seeking people like us. And then so that helped me get over the fear of like, oh, what if I reach out to them and then, it'd be awkward. Well, it's like they're looking for us, so they're seeking us out. So it's not weird to, kind of request that LinkedIn connection.
So maybe it's the same advice, just in Vicky's words. Just learn to get comfortable in your own skin. Because no matter where you go, whether you get the job, not whether, when you get the job, or when you go to networking, whether you do it online or whether you do it live, you're going to be telling your story. And, people can spot a fake miles away. If you're too worried about how you're presenting yourself, or you're too worried about how good or how not so good you are, then you're not going to deliver on the true fact of who you are. You have a story. So go tell that story. And that's when you're going to get comfortable, because at that point you have accepted who you are. Kevin says he's an introvert. Well, I could not tell that he was an introvert until he said he was an introvert. But I don't need to know whether he is or he's not, as long as he's comfortable knowing who he is. At my company, I have such great pride on that company, because they are looking for those misfits. Because in your head, sometimes you feel like that's who you are, a misfit. And you have never belonged anywhere, and you're no good at anything. You can't talk, and you can't look at people in the eye, and all these other things. It does not matter. If you can produce and you can get along with there's struggles, of course, because we're dealing with things that change all the time, and we're struggle because technology changes all the time and people change. So someday you might go in and all of a sudden it is your project and not somebody else's project. But so what? That's a good thing. So another thing that also prevents us from telling our stories when we're fearful of failure. And I speak from personal reference. I hated seeing errors. Hated it, because that means I did something wrong. But I have learned that was me. I was trying to compare myself to others, and I have always been successful. So I sure as heck feeling not so successful at coding, but I am so much more than coding. I am so much more than finances. I am so much more than a degree. And you know, one of the biggest assets that I saw me having is that I was able to talk to people, and I went across departments and talked to different people in different departments. And that was the most shocking thing to my team, that I was able to go across the room and talk to someone else that was not even in our team. Well, for me, that was a no-brainer. But for them, was like, oh my God, how could she just get up and go talk to people? So you have powers. You have something to give to these companies. You just need to be ready to do it.
Well, I think that's an excellent note to end on. All three of you had some fantastic advice and stories to share. So thank you everyone again for attending tonight. We will have a recording to share hopefully later this week in case you want to revisit anything. All of our wonderful panelists are also on Slack, so I'm sure they'd be happy to help answer any questions if you want to give them a ping. And then just keep in mind, we also have our career readiness team that is excited to help you all as you embark on your own tech career adventure. So thank you all again for attending tonight. I hope you have a great week, and we hope to see you soon.
I'm waving goodbye. Thank you all.